Greetings, it's your helpful housing analyst, William Leach, bringing you the topic, Operating Cash Flow. If you haven't already, pause the video and read the companion white paper that this video accompanies. You should note, in this example, black cells are formulas, blue cells are inputs, and purple cells should be formulas, except the scope of this example is limited. I have made them inputs where you will make them formulas. The first thing I want to show you is how to make numbers appear as better labels but still remain numbers. The way that you do this is with formatting. Highlight the numbers you want. Here I would like these numbers 1 through 10 to be labels year 1 through year 10. I'm going to highlight the cells, going to right click, format cells. We're going to go to the number tab. We're going to pick the custom format. And in the type, we are going to teach it. We want the letters YR space, and then we want to see whatever number the cell contains. When we hit OK, all of these numbers turn into labels. Let's take a look at our debt service. Here we're trying to show that we have 30-year amortization debt, 5-year AM, and 55-year AM. Okay, what if we want these labels to show the words year AM afterwards? We'll highlight them. Right-click, format cells, number, custom, go to type. In this case, we want the number first, and then we're going to do space year AM. Okay. Now the numbers look more like labels, but they are still numbers to be utilized in calculations. Next, we're going to talk about freezing panes. When you have the labels you want, and you have a huge spreadsheet you're working with, when you scroll down, you don't want to lose sight of the labels. When you scroll to the right, you don't want to lose sight of the line items. So we're going to use freeze panes to make them stay in that position. Now the way freeze panes works is you click on the cell that you want to disappear first. So it's the first cell that will disappear when you scroll in either direction. You go to View, Freeze Panes, and ask it to freeze panes. Then when you scroll, that cell goes away, that cell goes away, and that's how you utilize freeze panes to see your labels and see your line items. The next thing I want to show you is how not to use a bottom border for totals. Here we have a total. We're trying to see our total operating expenses. And like in the other areas of this cash flow, we would like to see a border. So this is what you don't want to do. Highlight the bottom one in the set and give it a bottom border. While it looks like it's fine, there's a problem with it. Let's go ahead and calculate these cells and see what happens. Well, I want my standard expenses to inflate by 103%, so I'm going to say equals last year's expenses times the inflation factor. Since I want the inflation factor to always reference the Charlie column, I want to put a money sign in front of C. So I'll hit F4, F4, F4 until I get the type of locking I want. So we're going to lock column C. And when I copy this and paste it, it works, but the fact that there was no bottom border got overwritten and I lost my bottom border. So instead what you want to do, we'll delete that. We'll get rid of this remaining bottom border. Instead what you want to do is highlight the total row and do a top border. Then when you do your calculations, equals last year times the inflation factor, F4 3 times so it locks the letter. Then when I copy this onto all of these, the top border remains because I didn't overwrite it with this cell's format. The next thing we're going to talk about is how do you get debt service to stop at year 5? Here I have $10,000 of debt service and I'm saying it's only over a 5-year period of time. How do I get it to stop? How do I get it to, if I do year 8, get it to go all the way to year 8? Well, here's how you do it. Let's go ahead and delete what we have so far. The way you do it is you come in and you say, hey, equals last year's debt service, but I want you to multiply it by a logical test. If it's true, do last year's debt service. If it's false, then do 0. So the logical test I'm going to teach it is the current year less than or equal to the amount of years I have to pay debt service? If it is less than or equal to that, it's true, give me the same debt service as last year. If it's not, it's false, multiply it by 0, I have no more debt service. Now, because I want to reutilize this formula for all of these cells, I want the B to stay the same, so I'll hit F4 3 times. And I want the 1 to stay the same. If I go up or down, I don't want the red cell to go up or down, so I want the 1 to stay the same. I'll hit F4 twice. So it locks the 1. So this says, hey, 2 is less than or equal to 8, and so use last year's debt service. Let's go ahead and copy that, paste it, and it says, look, all of these years, 10, are less than 30. It says, hey, they're all less than 55, but your debt service is 0, so I'm just going to keep showing 0. And let's see what happened in year 8. Formula, evaluate, says last year's debt service of 10,000 times year 8 is less than or equal to year 8, which is true. 10,000 times true is 10,000. But in year 9, formula, evaluate, last year's debt service of 10,000 times 9 is less than 8, and false. 10,000 times false is 0. So that's how we got the debt service to stop based on how long that debt is amortized over. The next thing I want to show you is how do you convert the calculation of compounding interest to calculating simple interest. So let's look at this residual receipts lender. They loaned us $5 million, they're charging us 3% interest, and we all had thought it was going to be compounding interest. The first year they charged us $150,000 of interest, it got tacked onto the balance, and then our second year interest also got calculated on the accrued interest, and our interest charge went up because it's now compounding on previous interest amounts. So we get told, nope, it's going to be simple interest now. You're only going to accrue interest on the principal balance. So we're going to split this up. We're going to insert a row. Instead of loan balance, we're going to call this principal balance. And here we're going to do accrued interest. Now, the accrued interest in the first year is going to be none because we've done nothing to accrue any interest. In the second year, however, let's go ahead and delete these for the moment. In the second year, however, what's your accrued interest going to be? Well, last year's accrued interest plus new interest charges minus payments. Great, you accrued $150,000 of interest. But what if we made a payment? $50,000? Yep, we'd only accrue $100,000 of interest. But what if we made a $200,000 payment? Negative number? There's no way to have negative accrued interest. So we need to force this negative number to never be negative, to only go to 0. And the way you do that is you wrap the function in the max function with a 0 parameter. That will never let the result be less than 0. So great, we have 0 accrued interest when we pay it all. 100,000 payment, we still have 50,000 of accrued interest. So how do we get the principal balance to get lower when we have a payment that's more than the interest? Well, we're going to say our new balance is equal to our old principal balance plus our old interest plus our current interest charge minus payments would make our balance go down, and minus if we're carrying any accrued interest, we want to look at it separately. We don't want to treat it as principal. So here we have just short of $5 million because the amount that we paid over the interest went to principal, and we still have no accrued interest. Let's take these formulas, copy them, paste them, and let's do a little testing. Zero payment, simple interest. Simple interest keeps accruing. We keep accruing more and more simple interest, but the principal balance stays the same, and our interest charges are always calculated on the principal balance. If we make a huge payment at the beginning, $500,000, great. We paid our interest for that year. We paid down $350 in principal, and our future interest charges are based on the new principal balance. All right, the last thing I want to show you is how to get multiple vacancy factors to count on different types of income and get them to calculate into one single vacancy loss cell. So the key here is the sum product function. The sum product function will multiply the first item in your arrays, then multiply the second item in your arrays, the third item in your arrays, the fourth item in your arrays, and then when it's done multiplying all those items, it will sum them all up. It gets the sum of the products of the items in the arrays. So in this example, it's taking 5% times 800,000, 5% times 12,000, 10% times 0, and then adding up those totals and getting 40,000. Let's go ahead and try it the long way. Equals 5% times 800. Drag that down so it does the same. Drag that down so it does the same thing to all of them. And then if we did equals the sum of these three cells, we get the same concept as the sum product, just takes a lot more effort. Let's go back and fix this. Last year's times the inflation rate, F4 3 times so it locks the letter. Copy, paste. That way our income continues to inflate and our vacancy factors are based on that year's income and our original vacancy factors. If we don't have these money signs in front of the B's, when we drag this formula to the right, the B column would keep moving and we'd get some wacky results. I pray this financial modeling example proves helpful to you in delivering housing to Californians. God bless.